For many people, technology has become the number one resource of getting more knowledge, skills, and many other things nowadays. That's why we are proud to provide our new mega project, Vigor Digital Learning Hub, VDLH. VDLH is a digital service that helps organizations to continue their learning journeys for their employees by providing learning solutions that needed for mastering different knowledge and skills for greater performance through various updated and important topics. We are providing digital learning services like webinars, virtual simulations, online assessments, live sessions, virtual conferences and exhibitions, virtual reality, business consultation, and coaching sessions. VDLH providing tailored training topics that will help HR organizations to boost up their learning performance and engagement. We are providing personal skills, business topics, relationship skills. VDLH is providing their learning in different digital tools that will support the learning solutions with the most efficient ways to deliver a full learning experience. The number one rule of achieving your goal is taking action, and with VDLH, we will make sure that every single action you take will be calculated, effective, and always supported by us. Start now. Contact us for more details. VDLH, Endless Learning.
Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Communication That Works. Thank you for taking time out and being here today. We will be running a live Q&A at the end of the webinar, so you can enter your questions in the chat box. It's on the right-hand side of your screen. Today is totally different. We hope you are having your notebook with you because today you will get a piece of fabulous information and hands-on experience. As we promised you, also as a part of our responsibilities at Vigor Enterprise to help everyone to overcome this tough time, we are continuing our support to the community by providing our free series of webinars through VDLH, Vigor Digital Learning Hub, our digital service to help individuals and organizations to continue their learning journeys anytime, anywhere in the world. And tonight, we have two amazing guests with amazing success stories with Vigor Enterprise in the past years, Ms. Heather Hansen and Ms. Shirley Taylor. Heather is a director of Global Speech Academy and is also a global communication specialist, TEDx speaker, and author. She delivers keynote presentations, workshops, and one-on-one consulting to help top global professionals communicate clearly and confidently in international settings. Shirley is a best-selling author, business writing specialist. She is the author of 12 books published by international publishers. Shirley has established herself as a leading authority in email and business writing skills. Her international best-selling book, Model Business Letters, Emails, and Other Business Documents, has sold over 500,000 copies worldwide and been translated into 17 languages. Please welcome Ms. Heather Hansen and Ms. Shirley Taylor.
Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much to Vigor Enterprise for organizing this fantastic event. Both Shirley and I have been working with Vigor for many years. We've both been able to visit Kuwait and run programs there. So it's very nice to see some familiar names on the line that we've seen over the years. And we're both just so honored and happy that you've chosen to take an hour to join us tonight. Today, I'm going to start us off by talking about powerful people skills for the digital age. But first of all, what are people skills? Go ahead and write in the chat box what your ideas are for what I mean by people skills. What are these skills that we humans have that make us unique, that make us different from animals, that make us different from robots, that mean that we can interact with each other and build a society? Put your ideas into the chat box for me. And I know that there's some lag, so hopefully. Leadership, connection, good. Excellent start. Give me some more. Interpersonal skills, emotional intelligence, human connection, excellent. Communication, thinking, interpersonal skills, compassion. Man, you're moving fast now. Skills that enable you to build relationships, listening, observing, excellent. Empathy, logical thinking, being kind, creativity, communication, presentation, self-awareness, excellent, David, great one. Social networking, debating skills, Rob Howard. Hello, Rob. Rapport building, negotiation skills, excellent, really, really good. These are all things that will come up normally when I run this in courses, and we put it all up on flip charts, and they're still coming. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Leading, negotiation, communication, critical thinking, excellent. So I think you've named all of these on the screen, all of them. Now, the book that I wrote, Powerful People Skills, that was published 10 years ago. And last year, the publisher called me and they said, Heather, we'd like you to update it. And I thought, how can I update this book? So much has changed in the world in 10 years. And really what I was thinking about was primarily our interactions with technology. You know, there's been a lot of talk about people being scared about losing their jobs changing, technology's effects on our society, artificial intelligence, natural language processing, deep learning. How are all of these things changing our world and how we interact and relate to one another? But then, just as I was supposed to be turning over the manuscript to the publisher, something else really big happened, and that was COVID. And that sort of changed my whole perspective on writing this book, because I think more than ever before, we suddenly realized how important human connection is. We realized how much we need each other, that we don't, that we also need that physical touch and that contact, and that it is a little bit different being online than the energy that is exchanged when we're face to face. So this has completely changed my perspective on the importance of people skills. And now I'm starting to look at it more from this perspective of social distance and what's happening when people are in isolation and when we can't have human connection, how our jobs are changing, how people are losing their jobs because of this pandemic, and the importance of people skills from a mental health perspective, a social perspective, an interpersonal perspective. So unfortunately, we know that the world is always changing. That's one constant. The world is always changing. And right now it's changing faster than we could have ever imagined. And we never could have foreseen this either. And unfortunately, we don't change as quickly. We evolve, we adapt. But one thing remains the same. We have these innate abilities and capabilities within us. And when the world around us changes, we need to adapt and reapply those skills that are within us. We don't need to become something different. We can still use the same human skills that we have: empathy, leadership, critical thinking, problem solving, all of those things that you wrote in the chat box. We just need to reapply them in a different way. So the big question tonight, how do we need to adapt right now to succeed in this changing reality, which is changing more than we've ever seen, most of us in any of our lifetimes? And the three things that I'd really like to focus on tonight are these vital functions: how we connect, communicate, and collaborate, because we need to do these three things in order to achieve or build anything in our communities, our cultures, our societies. We need to connect with one another, human connection. We need to communicate with each other, and we need to collaborate. And what's happening through this digital age and this pandemic is we're finding we need to do these three things in very different ways. And none of us know what the new normal will look like. We are writing these new rules of etiquette right now. But one thing we do know for sure is that relationships are very important. This man, Robert Waldinger, is the fourth director of a 75-year-long study of two groups of men, 724 men in total. Half of them were sophomore students, second-year students at Harvard University. The other half of them were boys from inner city Boston neighborhoods who came from very disadvantaged families, very poor settings, family situations. And they have been following these men for 75 years. Many of them have passed away, of course, at this stage. And the way that Robert Waldinger sums up this study in just one sentence, he says, good relationships keep us happier and healthier, period. It had nothing to do with how much money they made. It had nothing to do with, how successful they were, how famous they were. None of that mattered. It was the people who had close human connection, good relationships, strong family ties, friends. They were the ones that were the happiest. So we know that these relationships matter. We know that human connection matters. But now we need to connect in a slightly different way. We need to connect and build our relationships online. So this new etiquette is suddenly coming about. Normally in my courses, I would talk about how to make a great first impression. How do we make a proper greeting across different cultures? We would make eye contact, smile, we'd introduce ourselves, we'd shake hands or do whatever was culturally appropriate in our setting. But now it's slightly different when we're all communicating inside of a box. And we need to come up with a new set of etiquette, this new online etiquette of how are we going to connect when we're online, when we're in virtual settings. And this brings up a lot of new questions. But if we look at just the simple things, we only have, about 15 more minutes here for my segment. So if we look at something very simple, how we make a good first impression when we come online, when we come into a meeting. What's wrong with this picture? Tell me in the chat box. Put in your ideas. What is wrong with this picture? Does this person here look like half of the people who show up for your meetings with your company online during lockdown? Isn't this what people look like? What is wrong with this picture? Tell me in the chat box right now. All the things that you think are wrong. We'll wait a few moments while the lag sits in. What is wrong with this picture? Background, lighting, no makeup. We can have a conversation about the necessity of makeup or not necessity of makeup. Not having eye contact, disoriented, the angle, thank you. Oh my, poor setup, says Zuki. I agree. Too dark. Too much light on the background. Yep, light behind, expression. The double chin from the horrible angle of the camera. I threw that one in. Less focus. Paranoid. Interesting. Now I can see it. Looks like someone who found out the webcam is on. Chin angle not the best. I agree, Loida. Lighting it wrong direction. Lighting shadow angle. Excellent, 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 excellent. You picked up on all of my pet peeves. If you can see your ceiling when you are online, then you do not have the proper setup. Looks tired, not focusing on the listener, shadow, all of these things. Absolutely right. And yet we see this every day, don't we? We see people showing up in our meetings, and this is how it's done, correct? This is what they look like, showing up for a meeting online. So here we go. Does this look better? What do you think? The after picture, you'll notice I'm in the same place right now. And the lighting, we have light on the face, no light from behind. The sound is good. I'm wearing a headset in this picture. Right now I have a proper microphone here, so I don't need to have the headset on. The eye level, the camera is at eye level. So I can make eye contact with my listeners instead of looking down and around and all over the place. The background, relatively clean. Some people love having my map. Some people hate my map. So I have it up today, but I also sometimes will use a plain background which hangs, or I might find a different place to sit. So it's much more professional. Yeah, we don't need to see ceiling fans, says Linda. Really good. The eye contact looks much more well prepared, right? So you're dressed professionally, you have good lighting, which also makes you look younger. I have to love good lighting. Smiling, positive, making good eye contact, having the computer at the right angle. What a difference. If you look at these two pictures, what a difference that makes. Think if you were having an online interview. So many people have lost work during this period, and they will have to be interviewing online as COVID restrictions are lessened and eased. And think how you're showing up. just because we're online, just because we're working from home, it does not mean that we shouldn't be professional. So we need to dress the part and still present ourselves with that same authority we would have in the office. Great. And thank you. Sumir says thumbs up. Yeah, thumbs up. Wonderful. All right. So that's just a little bit about making that very first connection, that first impression online. You want to connect with people by looking them in the eyes. That means your webcam, and looking the part as well. Now, what about communication? How is communication now changing when we need to communicate from inside this little box, right? I mean, look at me today. I'm literally in this little teeny box up in the corner. And there are several things that we need to be thinking about when we're shoved into a box. These are just a few of them. Eye contact, our facial expressions are much more important because we don't have all the body language and gestures that we would normally. Our posture, gestures, voice, clear articulation, all incredibly important, even more important than when we are face to face. So let's take a look at these rather quickly. Remember that this is your listener's eyeball. It kind of looks like an eyeball, right? If you don't have a webcam, you might just be staring at a little green light. That might also happen, but that is the eye of your listener. If just looking at one eye is too difficult, stick another webcam up there. Now you've got two eyes to look at. If you forget that that is where you're looking, make that the eyes. Put a picture up there. Make it someone you're looking at so that you remember to look there. Many, many people want to look at themselves on the screen as they're talking, or they want to look at their listeners. Also, keeping eye contact with the camera brings up some other challenges. For example, think if you're in a negotiation, how much you pick up from watching the individual around you, the people at the table. You're not only watching their eyes, are you? You're watching their facial expressions, you're watching their body language. When we're looking in the camera, we can't look at all the people on the screen. We can't read the body language and the signals. So there are definitely some additional challenges that we're faced with when we're doing our business online. And it's something we do need to think about. Now, what about the facial expressions? It's great. When we're talking, we're normally paying attention to our facial expressions. It comes naturally. But when you're not speaking and somebody else is talking in your call, what are you doing? Have you suddenly kind of fallen onto your desk? Is your face giving away the things that you're thinking? The person speaking may not be able to see your reaction, but everybody else on that call can. So remember that you must monitor your facial expressions and your reactions to events and things that are said. Even I have a lot of trouble with this, especially if the other person does not have their camera on. When they don't have their camera on, I forget that my camera is on. And I tend to have a very expressive face. And so if they say or do something that I do not agree with, it's very common that I could catch myself making an expression that I probably shouldn't, and I forget that I am on camera. So this is really important that we are monitoring our facial expressions at all times when we're in online meetings. Watch your posture also when you're sitting down. We tend, when we're sitting, to lean over on the desk, rest our hand on our head on our hand, look at the mobile phone, look off camera, get busy with other things. Really be careful that you're sitting up straight, standing up straight. The other thing that is not very natural is our gestures. You see, in order for me to gesture to you and have you understand what I'm saying and get this extra emotion from my hands, I have to gesture up here at my shoulders. And it can look a little strange, but at the same time, if I just stood here like this and had no gestures whatsoever, I really don't feel that I can connect with you in the same way. Even when I do this, you can see my shoulders start moving around because I feel like I need to connect with you a little bit more. And that's what we also find on a webcam situation. We need to up the volume, up the energy, up the interaction to keep people engaged. So the body language, yes, Norhan, the body language is very, very important. So remember the things you can't see. Keep your eyes on the camera. Know that somebody could be tapping a foot. They could be looking at a phone. They could be doing other things. Do all that you can to keep your energy up and maintain that contact and connection. So what about the articulation piece? Because when we are online and we don't have a wonderful studio quality mic like the one I'm speaking in now. You just have your Apple headset, which actually has very good microphone and sound, but maybe you have some other kind of headset. The mic isn't very good. The connection is bad. When all of these things are happening and we have these distractions, it's even more important that you're speaking very clearly. And you probably need to slow down just a bit. You need to be checking for understanding much more often. But this is an entirely different webinar. It's an entire 2-day program, actually, or a 6-month online course around pronunciation. And so go to my website if you want to learn more about that. But just to sum it all up very quickly for you, you want to pay attention to R's. We know that in international intelligibility, the R sound will be better understood. So if you speak with a British accent that drops R's, or any really English accent that is not rhotic, that does not use the R, you may want to try to add a little bit more of an R sound when you're speaking globally. The same goes for the T. Now the T in American English, I would say something like internet, right? But if I'm on a call or just in general, usually because I live in international settings, I'm going to pronounce that T a little bit more strongly. So I'll say internet, clarity, okay? So R's and T's are really important sounds. Then you also want to emphasize your important words. Make sure that your voice goes up and you stress the really important words so you have some vocal variety. If you sound bored when you're speaking, then believe me, everyone is going to think you are boring. So you need to keep the energy up, show it in the voice, lots of ups and downs, keep people engaged and interacting, okay? So use that emotion in your voice as well. So finally, when we look at collaboration, it's all becoming very engagement-based. So here's the next big question. I'd like you to put your ideas into the chat box because everybody seems to be very concerned and worried about how do we maintain engagement in these online meetings? So my question to you in the chat box, please, how do you keep people engaged in normal face-to-face meetings? What are the typical things that you would do to keep people involved, engaged, and a part of the meeting and contributing to the meeting? What would you do? Please write in the chat box for me. Yosef wrote to keep them engaged, of course. Sleepy tones are the worst, said Zuki. That was talking about the articulation. So absolutely, we want to make sure that we're engaging people and collaborating well. Ask questions. Good, Abdallah. Perfect. Ask them for input. Excellent. Ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Eye contact. Good. Like what you're doing, asking us what's wrong in the picture. Exactly. Request for the cameras to be on. Yes. And engagement, stay objective. Drifting from the topic makes them lose interest. Good. Ask them for their opinion. Do activities. Humor, storytelling. Good. Mini polls. Interesting Menti type apps. Absolutely. I use those online. Being funny sometimes. Staying hyped while talking, and to talk in an interesting way and ask questions individually. Excellent, Lama. Keeping energy up. Assign roles. Wonderful, Mina. That's a really, really excellent one, to assign roles. That will keep people engaged. So these are all things you do in normal meetings. Look to them from different angles. Allow rotating speakers. Really excellent answers. So you already know how to keep people engaged. Use their names. Nada. Nice. Use their names. Yes. So you know how to do this in real life, in face-to-face situations. This is nothing new for you. We have the same challenges in a normal meeting. Telling stories, there's still a lot coming in. Energetic gestures, wonderful. Be yourself so they can connect. So here is my short answer. When people say to me, Heather, but what do I do? How do I keep people engaged online? How can I keep them participating in a meeting? And my short answer is do everything that you just told me. Just do it online. There is a way to transfer everything that we do in real life into this virtual box. We can do it. We can run polls. We can ask questions. I have you typing in the chat box. I could have also run polls. I think Shirley might have a couple polls for you tonight. You can use Mentimeter. Someone mentioned that, or other polling apps where you get to see lots of interaction, different answers in real time. That's really fun. You can set an agenda. Don't forget your agenda. No one mentioned that one. Make sure you have a set agenda. and that everyone has some kind of role. If someone is keeping the time, then they have to be participating. If someone is taking the minutes, they need to be participating. If 2-3 people are giving presentations, they all have a role, and that keeps people engaged and interacting. It's the same rules as a normal meeting. If you were having the normal meeting, you would do the same. Asking a lot of questions, getting the cameras on makes an enormous difference. When we have the visual contact, especially in these online situations, it's just so important that we can see each other. It gives an entirely different kind of connection. I know a lot of people are very shy to be on camera, don't have a lot of confidence on the camera, even though they might be very, very confident offline. And that's just something that you need to get used to and build up that confidence. And with time, it gets easier, it gets better. Let's see. Pose, pause, pounce model. Very interesting. And Sabika says a tendency to exceed time set for the meeting can reduce motivation to engage. That's very true as well. That's why the agenda is so important, that you stick to that agenda, you don't go over time. And finally, the last thing I would mention is, especially in this period now where we're on so many online meetings, so many webinars. That's why I'm so happy you're here, because I'm just overwhelmed with the number of webinars in my inbox right now. So the fact that you chose to be here is amazing, because we're all feeling a lot of this Zoom fatigue, right? So I would say before any meeting, ask yourself again, is it really necessary? Is this something that you need to have all of these people online taking an hour away? I've seen a lot of leaders struggle throughout this pandemic, needing to have a certain degree of control, thinking that, well, what are they doing at home? And we need to be on meetings a lot. And I think that they've learned through the time and over the course of the pandemic that people are actually getting a lot done. People are being, they're really doing well, being very productive, even though they have the distractions at home. And sometimes having too much control over the situation and calling a lot of meetings is just exhausting the team. So make sure that it is a situation where you need a meeting. Oh, I like this one. Nader says, invite surprise guests. My 2-year-old pops her head into our online meetings from time to time, and it gets a lot of laughs and smiles from the team. I love that. And you bring up another really great point, the fact that we've all become a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more authentic. My kids have also popped into some of my calls, and people are so excited to get to see my girls. The dog might start barking because the gardener shows up and whatever, right? There's all these things happening, and we're getting this little view into everyone's lives, their personal lives. And in a way, it's making us closer. And I think that's one really great thing that's happening now. So I think it's about time to move on. I'm not sure what just happened to my slides. They all just, oh, there they are. They came back. Wonderful. So I'd just like to leave you with this thought that you have all the skills you need. You already have them. You're using them on a daily basis. You were born with them. They are innate skills, capabilities that you have. What we need to do now is adapt and apply them in a somewhat different way so that we can connect, communicate, and collaborate moving forward into this new normal, whatever it may look like, whatever it may be. But you can do it, and don't let it overwhelm you. So I thank you once again, everyone, for being here with me today. I'm now going to pass things over to Shirley, who is going to be telling you all about how you can connect and communicate through writing. So Shirley, over to you. And I'll be back for the Q&A, so be sure to hold on to those questions. You can also write them in the chat box, and the tech people will be monitoring those, and we'll be coming on at the end for Q&A. Thank you, everyone.
Heather, you did an awesome job. I think we should have a round of applause in the chat box for Heather. So if you think she did a great job, and I know she did, give her a round of applause somehow. Give her a clap, give her the thumbs up, say thank you. She's a hard act to follow. She's just been telling you about how we communicate online. So I've got to make sure that I do everything, right? You can't see my ceiling, right? You can't see my ceiling, and I'm looking into the camera there. So let's get on now. Heather's been talking about people skills, the way we relate to each other, personally, whether it's in person or online. So today I'm going to talk about writing skills. Let's get going. In my session today, which is only 30 minutes, remember, you are going to discover one key thing that most of you are doing in your writing that is not working. You are going to discover this. I am not going to tell you. I'm hoping that you're going to discover this. One thing that's not working and how to fix it. So let's get started. In the chat box, please, I'd love you to type a yes or a Y. Do you remember manual typewriters? Come on, let's have some chat in the chat box, please. I know you're all thanking Heather at the moment, but I'd love you to type a yes in the chat box or a Y. If you remember using manual typewriters, come on, let me hear you. I want to know if anybody's my age. Yes, thank you, Rob. Thank you, Francis. Oh, yes, Nada. No, yes. And you know what? In those days when we had manual typewriters, we managed quite well. You know why? Because that's all we had in those days. That's all we had, that manual typewriter. But you know what? I felt like the luckiest girl in the world when I got my own electronic typewriter. I was a secretary back in the 70s and 80s. Oh, gosh, readers still got one. Oh, my goodness. Well, when I got my first electronic typewriter, I thought I was the luckiest girl in the world. And I still didn't get a computer by the time I left my job as a secretary and started training. But since then, of course, technology has taken over. We've got flat screens, we've got iPads, we've got tablets, we've got mobile phones. Technology rules our lives. At work, at home, at play, and in sleeping as well. So emails also rules our lives. I'm sure that you'll agree that we're sending more and more emails. So in the chat box, please, I have a question for you. As a cumulative group in the whole world, how many emails were sent every day last year? In the whole world, how many emails do you think were sent every day last year? Let's have some answers in the chat box, please. Every day last year. Billions, I know, but how many billions? Come on, 1 billion says 10. 2 billion says Wissam and Zuki. Zillions, huge number. Come on, give me a number. 20 billion. Okay, that's a good number. 1 billion plus, said Shauki. All righty, so let's take a look. Last year, we sent 246 billion. Ah, look at you. You're all saying 5 and 1, and somebody said 5 billion. Last year, we sent 246 billion emails every day. It's a shocker, isn't it? Every day. So this year, that number is going up. So here's another question for you. How many emails does the average office worker receive every day? Now, come on, the average office worker, one person. How many emails do you think the average office worker receives every day? Think about yourself. The average office worker, how many emails? Oh, Sabika, 100. I feel so sorry for you. Zuki, 100, 180, 25, Fatma. Ned, 150, 150. Wissam, 100. Oh, my goodness, we've got so many people on here. I'm loving this. 25, 50, 100, around 30 to 40, 20. All righty, well, think again, you guys. The average office worker receives 120 emails every single day. 120 emails. I think that's a bit shocking, I'm sure. How many emails then does the average office worker send every day? Think about that one. How many, if we receive 120 every day, do we reply to them all? How many emails do you think the average office worker sends every day? Let's have a look. How many do we send? 50, send 50. Yusuf, you send 240. I feel sorry for you. Zuki 40, Abdul Rahman 25, 20 to 30. Any more? Not counting spam, of course. Oh my gosh, yes, spam. Nada 10, It's 50, 10. Wow, fantastic. Thank you so much. You're all very, very engaged, and I'm very happy. Okay, so research says the average office worker sends about 50 emails every day. But here's my key question for you to think about. You don't have to answer this, but think about it. Of all those 50 emails that you are sending every day, how effective are they? Of all those emails that you're receiving every day, how effective are they? Now, before we look at today in a little bit more detail, I want to take you back in time. Imagine music coming on here. I'm going to take you back in time. Let's imagine we're going back to 1920. A business meeting may have gone something like this. Oh, good morning, Mr. Tan, and how are you? How's your good self? And your good lady wife? Do pass on my kindest regards to her. Allow me to take your coat. Kindly take a seat. So, in the early 1900s, the wheels of commerce turned very, very slowly. So people built relationships slowly. They kept people at a distance. And that was quite fine in the days of the pen and ink and of the manual typewriter, when everything went more slowly. Meetings were quite formal, rather cold, keeping people at a distance. Now, after that meeting, the boss may have sent a letter, something like this. Dear Mr. Tan, pertaining to our meeting this morning at our offices, please find attached herewith our formal quotation, for your reference and perusal. Should you require any further information regarding the above mentioned, kindly do not hesitate to contact the undersigned. With kindest regards, I remain your humble servant. So you see, what I want to point out here is the written voice in this letter is very similar to the spoken voice when they met. Whether they were speaking or writing, in the early 1900s, people had one voice, the same voice, for speaking and writing. Think about that. I want to bring it up to date now. Let's bring it up to date now. We're not in 1920 anymore. We're in fast-paced 2020. Let's pretend we're not in COVID right now. We're having a meeting. We're shaking hands here. Let's have a look at a meeting in 2020. Hey there, John. It's great to see you again. It's really good to see you. How's Mandy? Please tell her I said hi. Yeah, just hang your jacket over there. Hey, why not? Let's go over there and sit on the sofa. It's much more comfortable. So a meeting today would be just like Heather was talking about, very warm and friendly and getting to know people quickly. And people are building relationships quickly. Why? Because you have to build relationships quickly in order to get things done and to beat the competition. So today, meetings are casual, they're informal, they're warm, they're friendly, they're building relationships quickly. So let's take a look at what an email might look like after this meeting in 2020. Dear Mandy, as per our meeting, please find attached our quotation for your reference and perusal. Kindly do not hesitate to contact us should you require any further clarifications. Thank you and regards. I'm a little bit lost now, because does this make sense to follow a very warm, casual and friendly meeting? Does it make sense for our emails to look like that? I would say no. In the chat box, please, some of the language in this email that is yesterday, not today. Some of the words, the language in this email that is yesterday. Anybody want to suggest any? I'll start you off with as per. It's very old-fashioned. Anybody else want to give me type it out in the chat box there, some old-fashioned language that should not be used today? Thank you, Alan. As per, definitely old-fashioned. Anybody else? Please find. Absolutely. Anything else? Kindly. Yes, I ask you, do you actually say kindly? And if not, then you should not be writing it. Perusal, almost everything. You're right. So here's the thing, you guys. It's 1920. It's 2020. It's not 1920. Why do so many people have two voices? I talk to people all the time in my workshops, and I say, why do you speak in one voice and then you write in a different voice? And people will say to me, but Shirley, we can say this in speaking, in writing, must be different lah. Really? Why? Yeah, you're right, Lloyda. Very standard email, no personality. Myrna says, why don't we say happy to see you yesterday? Nadal says, why don't we say I'd like to thank you for the warm meeting? Absolutely. Why are we using old-fashioned, boring language today? It's 2020, not 1920. So I'd like to do some polls now to see your opinion on some writing. So can I ask my lovely guys behind the scenes there to pull up poll number 1, poll question number 1. The question is, which one is more like 2020? Let's have that first poll, boys. Okay, great. So we've got a lot of people here answering this. Yep, it's great. The first one is following our meeting today, 14% so far, gone down to 11. As spoken is not getting many comments. I'm so happy to see that the majority of you are saying it was good to meet you today, because that's exactly the sort of language that Heather was talking about, language that builds a connection. Well done. Totally love it. Let's move on to the next question, boys in the background there. Thank you. Let's go on. Okay, that's one question. Let's move on to the second question. Cool. So which one is more 2020? I'll let you read them on your own. Well, I take a sip of water. Which one is more? Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. You all know. Well, some of you don't know. Hold on a minute, Shirley. Don't jump to conclusions here. A few people are still saying, please find attached our virtual meeting brochure for your reference and perusal. Some of you are still saying, attached herewith is our virtual training brochure for your reference. But the majority of you are saying the one that's more 2020 is, I'm pleased to attach our virtual training brochure. I hope you find it interesting. So in a moment, when I get through a couple more slides here, I'm going to be asking you, what is the one key thing that a lot of people are doing in their writing that is just not working? I'll be asking you that in a moment, not yet. So save it, think about it. But I agree. Please find attached, old-fashioned, reference and perusal, boring, old-fashioned, attached herewith. I remember doing a course in 1981, and my teacher said to me, Shirley, why do you have to say herewith? If it's not herewith, where the heck is it? I stopped using herewith in 1981. Why are we still using it in 2020? So well done. And let's have the third question up, please. Oh, this is great. You guys are doing a great job here. So let's have one more question. Where's the third question? There it is. Which one is more 2020? Thinking. Okay, let me wait for a few seconds. Very good. Thank you very much for being so engaged and working with me on this. You've been fantastic during today's seminar. Interesting. The one at the bottom started off really high and then it's gone down to a little bit lower. Okay, so let's just give you a couple more seconds. And I think it's kind of wrapping up there now. So here are the details we need from you. I love it and I use it regularly. So if I'm in the middle of an email and I want someone to send me something, I'll say, here are the details we need from you. Put a colon after it. Love it. Brilliant. Please provide us with these details. Colon, if you are one of the 15%, pat yourself on the back because that's great too. Please provide us with these details. Colon, in bullets. That's great too. It sounds like I'm having a conversation. Kindly furnish us with following details. This is not great. Why would you use language like furnish us? I still see people using this language today. I'm not an empty room. I do not need furnishing. And let's have a look at the third one there. Please let us have the below mentioned details. The below mentioned, do we use language like that in 2020? I would say no. Please let us have the following details. Okay, that would be okay, but not below mentioned and not above mentioned either. Don't get me started on that one. So the third one, I would say let's tweak it to please let us have these details. How about that? Please let us have these details, colon. Look at the number of words that we're reducing this to. So well done, you guys. You did really, really well. So I'm going to move on now. Well done with the poll questions. Did you learn something from those poll questions? Give me a yes or a no. However, does the language of the email not need to be formal if the organizational? Well, you know what? Most people would say, yes, we sometimes need to write in a formal way, Sabika. We need to be a little bit more formal. But I would say that's one key rule that we must follow. And we're going to come to that in a moment. So thanks. I'm so glad that you learned something there. I'm going to be asking you, what's the one key thing that most people are doing in their writing that is not working, but not yet. So I want to take you back to this email that we saw earlier. Do you remember this one? Dear Monday, as per our meeting, blah, blah, blah. It's so old fashioned. I'm going to look in here. Oh, Myrna, you get the star. You get the gold star, Myrna. I just saw it. If you were the first there, Myrna just said, we need to write as we speak. Myrna, round of applause, Myrna. You got it. We'll come back to that in a minute, but you got it. Yes, Wissam, we can still be formal, but not boring and not really when to put people to sleep. Excuse me, short, friendly, respectable words. So let's have a look at the after version here. I call this one on the left. I'm a little bit cheeky here in my workshops when I'm doing training. I call the one on the left BS. But don't worry, that's not rude. It means before Shirley. Do you get it? Before Shirley. Do you like that? So on the right, after version, let's see if this sounds better. Hi, Mandy. It was good to meet you today. I'm pleased to attach our quotation for our premium XYZ. Please give me a call if you have any questions. I'll be happy to help. All the best. Can you see a huge difference in these two, the BS and the AS, the before and the after version? There is a huge difference, right? The meeting was warm and friendly, building a relationship in that meeting. This after email is warm, it's friendly, and it's also building a relationship. It's conversational. So here's the question there. Myrna's already answered it, but I'm going to ask you anyway. 10 says, yes, it's more fun to read. So again, I'd love to see your comments in the chat box. What is it that people are doing in their writing today that is not working? What is it that people are doing and it's just not working? What is it people are doing and it's not working? Any comments there? Oh, lovely. Thank you. Being formal. Thank you. Being formal. Yes, that's one thing. It's not personal. Good. It's being over formal, too formal, not emotional. Yes. I'll tell you what it is. What we're doing in our writing today that's just not working is we have one voice for speaking, and so many people have a different voice for writing. So remember, it's 2020. We don't need two voices. I get so many people say to me, oh, but Shirley, I put my fingers on the keyboard and I think, what should I write? What should I write? That's the wrong question. You should be thinking, what would I say? Not what am I going to write? You should be thinking, what am I going to say? And write as though you're having a conversation. Does that make sense? No social touch. Grammatical. Yes, these are. Be natural. Be you. Heather was talking about being authentic. This is great. We need to be authentic. Be personal, be warm, and write as though we're having a conversation. Now, I know online every day you see signs like this, right? You have to tick. I'm not a robot, so you have to prove every day that you are human. Even sometimes the one at the bottom there says, prove you are human. You see this every day online, I know. So let's look at how you can prove you are human. Here are my top tips. The heading here says that all use plain English. This is, in a nutshell, the language that we should be using today is called plain English. Yeah, I agree, Maha, we need to take into consideration the community culture. Definitely we need to do that, but I still want you to remember these key rules. Short words, not big words. Simple everyday English. Don't say things like, do you concur with me? Say, do you agree with me? Use short words. Instead of disseminate, say share. Keep sentences short. In my training, I count the number of words in sentences sometimes. And last week I counted 52 words in a sentence. 52. 52. Please keep your sentences short and keep your sentences one idea per sentence, one idea. And use active voice. Of course, all of these are things that we would go into a lot more detail about if we were conducting a whole half day or a 1 day session, because it's so important to get this right. We need to use active voice. Our great grandfathers in 1920, they used passive voice. Because why? Because it kept people at a distance. Today, we can't do that. We've got to use active voice, short, sweet, and simple, like Samir says there. Be concise. That means get straight to the point. And imagine you are speaking. Remember, it's 2020. It's not 1920. And as Heather mentioned earlier as well, it's never been more important to prove you are human. What I encourage everyone to do in writing, and Heather encourages everyone to do in speaking, is to make a human difference. We do that by making a great connection. We have to change the language in our writing to match this. So to help you all, I've got a gift for you, but I'll tell you about that later. Stay on till the end, you get a gift. We're going to open up to Q&A now. So I'm going to invite Heather to come back on screen. Hey, there she is.
Hello.
Are these participants fantastic, Heather?
Amazing. Let's give Shirley a big round of applause. Clappy claps in the comments. Big thank yous to Shirley. That was fantastic.
Shirley.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather. Thanks so much. So just a reminder,
You're welcome.
please be sure to type your questions into the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen.
Nohan's just said point number 6 is the most important, and that was have a conversation when you're writing. Thank you, Dr. Youssef. Thank you for all the lovely comments. Zuki's applauding us. Thank you, thank you. Bring us to Kuwait. We want to come back. Thank you, thank you. Any questions for us? Any questions at all for me or for Heather on speaking or writing?
There were some really nice comments that were coming up. You know, a lot of people, Shirley, and I think this is a really good question. A lot of people were writing about, yes, but what about when the culture in the company is very formal? What about in the Middle East where formality is so important? You know, won't people view it really badly if we're being too casual in our writing? So can you kind of clarify, you know, what you're saying in that regard?
Yeah. Do you know what? I lived in Bahrain for 2 years, everyone. I lived in Bahrain for 2 years. So I know exactly what you mean by the culture being a little bit more formal. I've also been back since then to Kuwait and to Dubai. So yeah, very often the communication culture is a little bit more formal. Now, if you were speaking to someone at this level, you would speak to them with different language in a different tone. To how you speak to someone who's way up here. So I just want you to remember that just because I'm talking to somebody at a very different level, it doesn't mean to say I'm going to start saying kindly and please find attached and please be reminded and please be advised that. No, we've got to adjust our language. We can be a little bit more formal, and this comes in under the heading of tone, Heather, doesn't it? You know, you talk about tone of voice. I talk about the tone of our voice when we are writing sentences. So definitely we must remember the different cultures, but we've got to still remember that we're having a conversation.
Absolutely.
Anything else?
So it looks like we have a few questions. Khaira asking, how do you rate the look of the reception? Sorry, how to overcome shyness in front of the camera?
How to overcome shyness in front of the camera and get comfortable on camera. You know, it's a really, really good question. Shirley and I, our closest friends and colleagues, are professional speakers. They are people who speak on stage in front of thousands of people. And you would be amazed how many people who are great presenters in real life have a really difficult time in front of the camera, in connecting with the camera and being authentic on camera and speaking from the heart on camera, even though they're some of the world's greatest presenters. So you are not alone in feeling uncomfortable. So there are lots of tips around how to connect on camera. One that I do really like is putting a photo of someone you love right next to that camera. So you're looking at them and speaking to them. So having that image of an actual person instead of just looking at the green dot or that webcam eyeball, right? So that you remember there's a person there. That's the way to make it the most authentic. Remember there's a person behind that dot, behind that webcam, and you want to speak and connect the same way you would in person. But it is about envisioning that person inside of that camera, pouring your heart, giving your energy into the camera when you're speaking. And hopefully you feel that Shirley and I did that tonight. Hopefully we did that.
And you know what else I want to add there, Heather? Make an effort. You know, we have to make, I mean, right now for Heather and me, it's 10:10 in the evening. I'm tired. I want to go to bed, but I want to give you 100%. I never want to give less than 100%. And I know Heather's exactly the same. So we wouldn't be doing our job properly if we didn't pump up the energy. When I finish this call, I'm going to crash. True, right?
Yeah.
I would like to answer one question from Linda. She said, what are your thoughts about saying I hope?
The question from, yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Linda wants to know, can I write I hope? Absolutely. I hope to hear from you soon. I love that at the end of an email. It's a perfect way to say you're expecting a reply. I hope to hear from you soon. I hope you will enjoy. I hope you will find my brochure interesting. I hope. Absolutely, there's nothing wrong with it. And definitely, Salim, the WhatsApp communication is, I'm not going to say it's replacing, because research on email says email's going nowhere for at least 10 years. Nowhere. So we are stuck with email. So let's start writing as though we're having a conversation and start softening and warming up our language. But yeah, WhatsApp is definitely being used a lot. Any more?
So, Doki asking, any case studies in the market for either of speaking or writing errors?
I've got lots of books out there with lots of errors in them. So, I've got some lovely before and after examples in a lot of my books. You know what I would suggest, we need to do, it takes practice, Heather. We can't just learn it either from a book, right?
No, not at all. And I mean, there are, of course, we have many, many case studies because these are the clients who come to us, right? So, I mean, I have people who come to me because they need help with their pronunciation. They need help to be understood in global settings. And for example, one woman who had designed an entire software system for a major software company, major Fortune 500, huge, you would know the name. And when it came time to doing the voiceover to explain how that worked, they chose an American because, well, people would respond better to that voice. And so that person ended up taking all the credit. I think it's just so important that we all start to find our voices, that we learn to speak intelligibly, not necessarily like an American or a Brit, but that we speak clearly and confidently with our own voice. And like Shirley was saying, it doesn't mean that you use old-fashioned language. We can be formal without losing our sense of self. I know how to behave well in formal situations. I know how to behave differently around my family, around my kids, around my husband. We all do this naturally. If we are well-mannered, if we've been well-raised, if we've worked on our people skills, then we are able to read a room, read a situation, and we understand how we should be interacting in that situation. This is what people skills is all about. We have these skills. It's a matter of understanding them and applying them correctly. So whether it's the language, whether it's how you sit, how you make eye contact, there are cultural rules, there are societal rules, and part of having good people skills is learning how to apply those correctly.
Fantastic. Any more questions?
Nadir asking how to maintain respectful tone in a casual mail, especially when addressed to older generation.
Well, you don't need to be casual when you're addressing an older generation, and maybe it's not necessary, but it doesn't mean you have to be old-fashioned and say, use one of your great examples, Shirley. You're better at pulling those out.
Yeah, we don't need, it makes me laugh actually, because a lot of people will say, what about when you're talking to an older person? I normally say, how old? Being an older person, I'm not going to ask you now, but how old? So beware, be afraid. Please remember respect. That's very important. We've got to be respectful and courteous in everything we do and in everything we say. If Richard Branson walked in my house now, please. I would be definitely speaking in a very different kind of, I would be watching my words and my eye contact and my voice and my tone, but I would be speaking like Shirley. And that's the key. We've got to be ourselves. Like Heather says, find our voice.
Yeah, I think Lama, I don't know if this is an L or an I, it might be an I, so I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. She has a really interesting comment here talking about how people think they're rude when they communicate with their more authentic voice. And it happened to her that she wrote an email and writing more casually and received the feedback of, haven't you been studying in school? Because it seemed like it was just too casual. I am questioning, I would like to see the mail because I'm questioning whether there was a little bit of text speech included, if the grammar was wrong, if there was a lot, because that's a whole different conversation. But she said, it made her go back to being really formal in email because she felt that was the expectation. So I don't know if you have a reaction to that. I thought it was a really interesting comment.
Thank you very much, Lama. This happens a lot. You know, I get this question a lot because so many young people today go in the workplace and they've been speaking casually and they've been writing emails fairly casually, and they go in the workplace and they see people writing, "Kindly be advised, please find attached for your reference and perusal. Please do not hesitate to contact me should you require any further clarifications." The danger is to follow everybody else. What I would love to see is some of the younger people in today's workplace making some, not noise about it, but trying to make an impact and say, hey, you know what, we should be softening our writing style and writing like we're having a conversation. I would love to see the younger people of today raising their voices and talking to people, hey, this is a little bit old-fashioned. You know, do it courteously and respectfully. Maybe someone will listen.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point there. We can be respectful and be modern. I think there is a difference there about being old-fashioned and using extravagant language that isn't used in real life. I mean, we don't use this stuff unless you learned from very, very old colonial textbooks.
Yes.
Nobody actually uses those words in real life. And I think that's kind of your mission, Shirley, is to remind people that, hey, we threw out those textbooks years ago. And we can still be respectful. We can still connect. We can still build relationships without using language that's so unnatural, so incredibly unnatural.
Absolutely. There's another question here from Linda. The salutation, hey, Heather, sounds way too casual. Absolutely. If I was writing to someone in business, I would not address them, hey, Heather.
Never.
But when I'm sending a message to Heather on WhatsApp, I'll say, hey, that's fine. That's fine. Excuse me. But definitely not in emails.
No.
Whew.
We have a question from Khalid. He asking how to improve feedback in our company.
How to improve feedback. If the company doesn't have a feedback culture, how can I improve it? That's a really excellent question, actually, because that's a culture change that has to happen. It's a mindset change, and it likely needs to happen from the top down, because that's probably where the feedback is coming from. And I think there are small things that you can do yourself by going to a manager, going to a boss, and saying, could I have some feedback on this? That's how you can start developing that culture just by yourself, no matter where you are in the organization. If you start asking the people around you for feedback and they start feeling more comfortable giving you feedback, if they start feeling comfortable to ask you for feedback back, if you offer to give people feedback, hey, if you want me to look over that report before your presentation, I'd be happy to give you some feedback. There's a way to do this in a friendly and supportive and encouraging way. It's not about critiquing and criticizing. It's about helping people become even better at what they do. We ask for feedback because we want to be better. It's rare that I send anything out into the public without asking Shirley to read it first, because—
And vice versa.
And vice versa, because it's important to get that feedback and say, that sounds odd. Why, and we're close enough that we can be very honest in the way we give our feedback. But you can start that culture change on your own. You can begin it. It only takes that spark. And if you are at a managerial level, then I would even look into instituting that in some way, having 360-degree feedback sessions, having the yearly assessments, having those kinds of conversations within the organization and making it a structured part of the culture. But if you are not in that position of authority, you can always start on your own asking for it and offering it. And I think that would be the best way to get started.
Absolutely, you've got to be the lead and take the lead and show some initiative. I love Norhan's question. I live in Kuwait, and I would like to know if you will do any work or lectures in Kuwait. Yes, please. We would love to get on a plane as soon as all this is over. Bring us to Kuwait. Meanwhile, we'll be behind a camera.
Yeah, looking forward. So, Hanan asking, can practical messages be summarized?
Practical messages. Sorry, we're having trouble hearing you.
Can practical messages be summarized?
Can practical messages be summarized?
Yes.
Shirley, do you want to? I think that's referring to email.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a way, if you've got a big long paragraph and you tell, and it's too long, then you got to have a good knowledge of the language in order to summarize. Very often at the beginning of a report, there needs to be some kind of executive summary. So that's taking language to a very different level, because there's a lot more that would go into writing a summary. So, yeah, I mean, if we were going to summarize what we've learned here today, we could put it in a 1 page, or we could put it in a half a page. We've got to pick out the key points. So it's analyzing it and picking out the key points. Lots of different techniques that we need for doing anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Very quickly, I think we need to clear this up. Sally says, so Shirley, in your opinion, I have to send hi instead of dear in 2020, even if I'm sending formal email to my CEO. So I'd like you to please explain this again, because it doesn't sound like we're all fully understanding.
Okay, well, I didn't see that. Okay, so I would say if you're writing to your CEO, then you will write dear.
Absolutely.
If you call your CEO Mr. whatever, then you will write dear Mr. whatever. If you call your CEO Faisal, then you would say, dear Faisal. Remember, we're having a conversation. If you meet him along the corridor and his name is Faisal, then you would call him dear Faisal. So I would definitely say, if you're talking to somebody up there, you will say dear. And it's a general rule of thumb for writing. I would say if you're writing to someone for the first time, I would normally say dear. If I don't know the person, I would normally say dear. And then after 1 or 2 emails, you can soften it to hi. I wouldn't
assuming it's not the CEO. Or
definitely if it's not the CEO.
It's based on relationship. And that's where the people skills come in, of reading a situation and understanding the relationship and the closeness of that relationship, so that you are acting appropriately according to culture and business culture, as well as your country's culture, your society's culture. So it all has to fit together.
Absolutely, Heather. And you and I have had lots of meetings with different clients before COVID-19. And you've met some of my clients who I've known for many years. And I've got a real quite close relationship with them. Even though they're very senior people, the minute I walk in, I give them a big hug, because that's what I do. Now, you're not going to do that to everybody. But it's all about relationships. That's what Heather said. It's all about the relationship that we have with those people. Good day is so formal. It's too formal. I would suggest don't do it.
Yeah, good day, too formal. There's an interesting message here that I received privately. Someone says that I look young for my age, so whenever I speak to a patient, I usually lower the tone of my voice so I sound professional. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts about this? I think that's very, very interesting. I definitely have different voices, right? I have the voice I use with my children. I have the voice I use with my husband. I have the voice I use in a conversation like this, when I'm online, when I am presenting. We all have different voices, and we can apply tone in many different ways. You've picked up on something very important, this idea that having a lower tone of voice can come across as more authoritative. We do have an unconscious bias for lower voices being equated with power, being equated with authority. The very famous example is Margaret Thatcher, who went to a voice specialist to lower her voice by at least an octave so that she could come across and participate in a male-dominated global world and have power and authority. So I think what you're doing, you're likely doing it more naturally than you think. And I wouldn't think of it as you putting on a voice or not being yourself. I think there are certain voices and ways of speaking that are appropriate for different situations, just like different words we use in an email, depending on the situation, depending on the relationship. I can talk to my girls and say, oh, hi, my little love, and how are you? And have you had a good day? But I'm not going to talk to anyone professionally like that. I have a very different voice for a different situation. So I think what you're doing is excellent. I think you're probably connecting well with your patients, probably also by lowering the volume of your voice, speaking in more hushed tones, because you mentioned patients. So I'm assuming there are privacy issues and confidentiality. So I think you're actually doing a really good thing in maintaining your professional image, including your voice and the way that you speak. That's really important. So well done, you. Good job.
Somebody else asked me a question there. Sally asked, shall we use abbreviations like FYA and FYI? I would say internally only, as long as everybody understands what that means, because FYA, there are lots of companies who use that to mean for your approval. Other companies use it for your action. So don't use it unless you actually know exactly what it means. Internally, okay. Externally, definitely not.
Yeah, and I can tell you, we often think everybody understands, and yet they don't. Abbreviations like that are so popular in Singapore. The Singaporeans use abbreviations for everything. I've learned so many new ones since I moved here years ago. But in the beginning, I was always asking, what does that mean? What does that mean? I felt so dumb. Like, why don't I've never heard these things. And it's the same as using technical jargon and business speak, right? We want to try to remove some of that so we can better connect and we don't make people feel dumb or like they're sitting there thinking, why don't I know this? Everyone else, we think people know, but they don't always know, unfortunately.
Well, thank you. You've asked us a load of great questions there, you guys. I hope you've all had a great time this evening, this afternoon, whatever it is there. Anything finally, or are we okay there?
I have one last little note, and I think it's just such a good one. So I want to mention this one. Sabika says, any advice for eye contact while we're moderating webinars? Because we have a script, but we're also loading and offloading presentations, switching speakers. We're doing all this stuff on these virtual platforms. And she says, it seems my eyes go all over the place. And it's true, right? I mean, it's the same as right now. I have to break eye contact to read the chat box. I can't always be looking at you. When Shirley's speaking, of course, my tendency is to look at her on the screen. So again, I'm breaking my eye contact, her beautiful smiling face, right? So that's going to happen. When Shirley and I are running our virtual training programs, we can be running 4 hours, 7-hour programs, and we have 3 different screens running.
Yeah.
We have a screen running our PowerPoint. We have a screen running all the gallery view so we can see everyone in the course. We have the chat box. We have annotations. We have this. We have that. We have all this magical stuff. And you have to look around a bit, but you want to try to maintain that eye contact with the camera as much as you possibly can. But I think, as we're all adjusting to this, we all know what's going on behind the scenes. If no one has hosted a webinar or hosted a virtual meeting yet, your day is coming. It will happen, and you can plan on it. And we're starting to understand this experience and how challenging it can be. And it does take a lot of skill to be able to manage those different screens, different cameras, and clicking the slides and seeing the slides. And it takes some time to adjust. I would say as far as scripting, I think that's where we tend to go wrong. If you can go without a script, then you can just look at bullet points and you can speak more naturally. If you must have a script, then you can always look into different teleprompter apps that can just run on your phone or an iPad. They can run, standing up just behind your camera, or you could have it standing on your laptop, leaning up against your screen, because if you're reading, you don't need to see your slide. And that can help you with the eye contact a little bit. There's one that's free online called teleprompt.me. Did I get that right, Shirley?
Yeah, you did.
Teleprompt.me. And that's a free one. You just put in your content and it will spit out this little teleprompter, and it uses that fantastic AI technology, natural language processing. It recognizes your words as you speak, and it will run naturally as you're talking. So it's a very interesting program. Of course, then you can't have your slides or you can't see anyone, you're only reading. So I would, and this is something I teach a lot in my presentation skills course, is how to work off of points and outline so you can speak more naturally. Because I'll tell you, if you're reading off a script, you have zero connection with the audience. you really don't have any connection. They know you're reading. It's like, just send me your notes. I'll read it myself, right? So,
but you know, Heather, there's a way, isn't there? We all know as professional speakers that we've seen some speakers who are, you can tell they're reading from a teleprompter because they've got no energy and they're just, we can tell that they are just reading. Or you can get other people who still have all that energy, even though they might be reading from a script. So, you know, don't try it unless you're really good at it.
Yeah, reading is also a skill set. So being a good reader, knowing when the voice should go up and down, knowing when there should be stress and emphasis. I mean, I've done a lot of voiceover work, so I was actually trained in reading. And you know, think of how you read a story to your children and how your voice goes up and how you overemphasize things. That's what we do when we're reading a script as well. And there is another skill set that needs to be worked on and practiced to do that well.
You guys have been amazing tonight.
We have gone on and on. This has been so fantastic. We could be here all night. We could go
we
on.
want to go on and on. So,
oh, but we're so happy.
Thank you so much, Shirley. Thank you so much, Heather. With no doubt, we know you will have informative and amazing webinar with you both. Thank you so much for your time and effort.
We've loved it, and we want to give everybody a free. We've got 2 free gifts for you today, but it's really important that we get some feedback from you. So if there's anything that you've enjoyed about our session today, please write it down in the survey that you'll get immediately after this webinar in your email. Thanks for all the comments, but please, in the survey, fill that in. If you fill in the survey, look what you get. I'm going to give you a checklist. It's a 2-page checklist called Top 10 Reasons Why Your Writing Style Isn't Working and What You Can Do About It. It's a great checklist that you're going to love. Heather, what have you got for them?
I have a nice 2-page summary of everything we've talked about today. So if you didn't frantically write down everything you were hearing, you will have a full 2-page condensed notes or cheat sheets of the top strategies and tips that I talked about today. So full checklists of how to set up your online space so that you make a good impression, checklists around how to collaborate and keep people engaged. So I hope you enjoy that. And of course, we also have lots of free stuff on both of our websites. So feel free to go digging around our websites as well. And you'll find my pronunciation course. I know Shirley, I'm sure you have a bunch of free stuff on your site as well. So please feel free to connect with us online, LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere, Instagram, connect with us and send us your questions. And we'd love to carry on the conversation with all of you. And hopefully we'll get to see you wherever you are right now, sometime very, very soon when we're allowed to get on an airplane again.
And if not, we are available for virtual sessions.
We're running lots of virtual training as well, so we'd be very happy to do it from a distance as well.
I'm going to pass back now to the lovely guys at Vigor. Thank you so much to you guys for organizing this. Back to you.
Thank you, Vigor. I know you've been trying to shut us up for 15 minutes, but we just keep going. Thank you so much for organizing. We miss you. We love you all. We're so happy you all could be on the call today. So thank you very, very much. Pass it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. An exclusive strategic partner in the region with Ms. Shirley Taylor and Ms. Heather Hansen. We would like to thank you all for being a part of this great webinar. For more information and details about in-house workshops with Ms. Shirley Taylor and Ms. Heather Hansen, please contact us on contact@vigorenterprise.com. And we at Vigor Enterprise are glad to announce our upcoming free live webinar, Making Agreed Decisions in a Crisis, which will be held on June 9. Please watch the next video to get more information and visit our website to register. Thank you again from Vigor Enterprise and VDLH. Stay safe, wash your hands, and see you soon.
Hi there. I hope you're well. My name is James van der Westhuizen, and I look forward to sharing with you a very important topic in our next Vigor Enterprise webinar. This webinar will take place on the 9th of June, 7:30 Kuwait time or 4:30 GMT. And we're going to be looking at a really important capability, both for business and personal life, which we hardly ever learn in a structured way. That is the art and science of good decision making. In times of crisis, it's really important for us to make very good decisions. And yet, in times of crisis, we often find that our brain, that is mostly our best friend in decision making, can also be our worst enemy. We're going to be spending some time together exploring tips and techniques, as well as practical suggestions about how you can work on one of your decisions you need to make and improve your decision making so that you can get better outcomes and be more successful in this time where decision making is so important and yet so hard. I look forward to working with you, and I look forward to seeing you in this highly interactive session. Take care.